Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy. We are here with our third entry in our Peter Jackson month. Peter Jackson month being we're going through his entire filmography, going through his earlier films right now. So we're up to his third feature film, which was Braindead, which is also called Dead Alive in North America. So there's two titles to confuse you right there. We'll probably be referring to it interchangeably, probably throughout this review, which of course the 1992 New Zealand comedy horror film, splatter film. Oh boy, is there a lot of splatter in this film, of course, directed by Peter Jackson. Like all the previous films, and certainly the next two films, Heavenly Creatures and The Frighteners, we haven't seen those films before, so that'll be like a first-time viewing for us when we get to them. And we're finally getting to talk about this film. This is the first time we've talked about it on the channel. This was one, probably out of all of them, that I was really looking forward to. I'd seen certain scenes from it. Its reputation definitely precedes it. And now we can officially say that we have seen this cult following, cult favorite film. And we'll go into our review on it in just a second. But before we do so, over to Tate with the socials.
Yeah, sure. So we've got loads of reviews coming out, especially with the Peter Jackson month. So be sure to follow us on various different things. Also, for this video, please comment below with your thoughts on Braindead or Dead Alive, whatever you call this film. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe as well. And please go and follow us on all of our social medias so that you're able to kind of, follow anything that comes out in the near future. We always post all of our schedules up on there, so you're able to find out from the videos coming out. So that's on Twitter at Cinema Savvy, on Facebook, Cinema Savvy, letterboxd.com, that is once again /Cinema Savvy. And then go into the link in the description to see our TeePublic, where I'm wearing the very cozy jumper today as well.
Awesome. Let's dive into this thing then. So, we've lost Tate. I think he's closed the wrong window. He will be back shortly. So we've got the one-man show for right now. The two-man show has returned. There we go. So we've got Carl in the comments right there. He's put, evening, gents. Haven't seen this film before, but looking forward to the review. We probably will go into spoilers with this thing, but I guess just right off the bat, I do recommend anyone to see this film. Let's go into sort of like initial opinions then on this film. Well, not even opinions, but our thoughts going into it. Did we know anything about it? I think literally all I had seen from this film was the lawnmower scene. And if you don't know what the lawnmower scene is, that is probably the most standout scene in the film, I would say. Well, I say standout scene. It's kind of like the entire final act, let's be honest. This is definitely Peter Jackson at his most extreme when it comes to like gore and effects. And, we've seen that amount him week by week. Bad Taste had a lot of it. Meet the Feebles had some of it. This one just went completely balls to the wall. But the lawnmower scene, you've got the main character played by Timothy Balm. He's holding aloft the lawnmower with a rotating blade. And let's just say he's in a room full of zombies and there's a hell of a lot of fake blood. And I will tell you exactly how many gallons of fake blood they used. Carl said no worries on spoilers, so I guess we can go into it. But that was the only scene, the only clip, the only thing that I knew about this film. I kind of knew about the Sumatran rat monkey. And I don't think I've actually gone into the plot of this thing yet. So before I start boggling people's minds with lines like Sumatran rat monkey, which probably makes no goddamn sense. The plot for this film, a young man's mother is bitten by a Sumatran rat monkey. She gets sick and dies, at which time she comes back to life, killing and eating dogs, nurses, friends, and neighbours. It's a zombie splatter film, essentially. And it's a film that knows exactly what it is. Not knowing anything about this film, I kind of went in cold, and it's definitely, fledgling Peter Jackson. That being said, this came out in 1992. I thought this was like an 80s movie. I guess I haven't been keeping track of when the previous films had come out. But this was 7 years, not even a decade, 7 years before he went into post-production on The Lord of the Rings. I can't remember if Lord of the Rings went into post-production in 98, in which case it's 6 years, or if it was 99. I'm pretty sure it was around 99, but yeah, like I say it week to week, and I haven't seen Heavenly Creatures yet, and I haven't seen The Frighteners. I know Heavenly Creatures is more of that drama film and probably more of a restrained Peter Jackson than certainly the likes of his first three films. But how did he swing that deal for Lord of the Rings? I say it every week, but when people blag on their resume or their CV and they kind of like bolster it and make it sound better than it actually is. It's like, so Peter Jackson, what makes you think you're qualified to directing The Lord of the Rings? Well, I have directed many feature films, many groundbreaking on low budgets, and they've all been wildly successful. Saying that, this film wasn't a financial success. This, I think, this lost a lot of money. So it was done on a
Yeah,
budget of 3 mil and made 242. Well, in the US at least, I don't know about the rest of the world, so this isn't accurate. But in the US, it made 242,623 US dollars. So, but I don't think it made its money back. Let's just say that. But I'm rambling anyway. What were your opinions take going into this? Did you know
well,
anything about it? Had you seen any scenes from it?
I'd seen the lawnmower scene. I think that's the one scene that everyone's seen from this film. But it's just surprising every single week when we go through these Peter Jackson films that we just kind of we still haven't got to that stage yet where it's like, yes, you can direct Lord of the Rings. Or you can even jump to that kind of thing. And especially with this film turns up the splatter to 100. And it's so
Wildly
interesting
considered
because
one of the goriest films, if not the goriest films ever made, measured, measured in terms of fake blood use, which is,
yeah,
yeah.
it's absolutely insane. And now I'm trying to think, wow, imagine if they did this with Lord of the Rings, like how gory it could have been if he went with that route. I think it would have been very interesting indeed. But going into this, I didn't expect it to be a comedy to start off with. I thought it
Right,
was going to
okay.
be not grounded, but I thought it was going to be more of kind of like a drama because I thought, okay, he's had his two films, both of the previous ones were comedies. I know that Heavenly Creatures is the one where he fully transitioned into drama, but I thought this one would be a little bit more grounded and kind of more like the normal zombie apocalypse films, like Day of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, and stuff like that. But no, this was straight leaning into the comedy elements. It was like watching a higher budget version of Bad Taste, just about zombies,
Yeah,
not aliens. Especially with some of the acting involved. It was quite kind of, especially in that opening scene with the Sumatran monkey and stuff like that. The acting, should we say, wasn't the highest of calibers, but I think that was done on purpose, and
absolutely.
it
Yeah.
gives the film that kind of unique charm, and it immediately puts it into that category of, well, straight away, it feels like a cult film. It feels like one of those films where you'd kind of go back to it and watch it, like not appreciate it for like, oh, it's high level acting, oh, it's kind of high level drama. No, no, no. This is a film that is stupid and is made to be stupid. And I'm glad that it is because it was really entertaining purely out of that leaning so heavily into that side of things. And don't worry, they do turn up the gore and they do turn up kind of the horror elements, shall we say. The custard scene, for example, is one of the grimmest
Oh,
scenes
yeah.
I have watched in a very long time. And that has absolutely nothing to do really with blood, guts, and gore. So it's it's one of those films which is definitely going to stick with me. I quite enjoyed it personally. I think it's his
Yeah.
best film that I've seen out of the collection of them so far. I know you liked Meet the Feebles, but I wasn't the biggest fan of that. So this
Mhm.
is a big jump up in kind of how his films are going. I still haven't kind of got to that stage yet of understanding, oh my God, this is Peter Jackson directing this film yet, though. But yeah.
Yeah, and I mean there are a lot of nods in this film as well, which we'll go through as we talk about this film to some of his later films and obviously films that he was influenced by. First and foremost, the opening scene set on Skull Island, which is his nod to
Mm.
King Kong, which he would, later go on to, of course, direct a remake of or a reimagining of, I should say. Yeah, and there's loads of things, and even in King Kong, in the endless opening scene on the boat, I think there's a scene where oh God, what's the main actor's called?
Adrian Brody.
Adrian Brody, thank you. He's in like the cages where they keep all the animals, and there's crates and everything for animals. And on one of the crates, you can see Sumatran rat monkey, which I thought was cool. I think there's even a reference to the Sumatran rat monkey in the Adventures of Tintin, of all things. Which obviously Peter Jackson, I think he produced that film, didn't he? He
Yeah,
didn't direct it. That was
he's
Spielberg.
directing the newest one. I believe that's his
Oh,
next
is he?
film
Yeah.
after the Beatles documentary comes out.
But yeah, I knew relatively nothing about this film. From the clip I did see, I assumed that it was going to be more tongue in cheek and just based on what we'd seen before. Some people say that, the first few, certainly the first three Peter Jackson films are very tasteless. I don't know. I think there's a real charm and a real humor to them, which I really appreciate. They're completely zany, off the wall, everything cranked up to 11. I have actually found the amount of fake blood used in this film. So,
Oh my
there
God.
was 300 liters of fake blood that was used in the final scene alone. And there is blood in other scenes as well. So it's definitely going to top that. Um, and I did see somewhere else of how many gallons were being pumped out per second. If I can find that real quick. During the lawnmower scene, movie blood was pumped at 5 gallons per second, which is
Jeez.
incredible. And the legacy of this film as well, and kind of just the shakeup that it had. So there are 2 different versions available of this film. There is the uncut version, and obviously I recommend trying to track down the uncut version if you can. That's part of the challenge week to week, in all honesty, for this Peter Jackson month is
It'll get
locating the
easier.
damn
It'll
film. Yeah,
get
to try
easier.
and I know for Heavenly Creatures, I think there's like a director's cut version as well. So I think we've got one more director's cut, and then obviously Lord of the Rings, King Kong, much more wildly available to get the extended cut for those films.
Yeah.
So there is a 104-minute uncut version, and then the cut version, I believe, is 94 minutes, which removes all of the fun and probably some of the really interesting practical effects in this film. But this film got banned in many countries and still remains banned to this day, which is quite incredible.
Really?
I didn't know that. So, United Kingdom and Australia didn't give a shit. Like, they just released the full 104-minute version. And actually, the BBFC, the classification board, they found that the gore in the film and the tone was so light-hearted in tone that they seriously considered just giving it a 15 rated to get more people to see the film. Then they eventually kind of came around to it that there is quite an excessive amount of gore in the film, so we can't quite give this a 15, despite it being light-hearted in tone. We've got to give it an 18 rated. And honestly, there are no parts in this film that are really scary. I think it reminds me of Evil Dead 2, and that's why I thought it felt very much like an 80s film. Like, the way it shot, it didn't feel 90s at all. It feels very much like a throwback to those earlier films. And Sam Raimi, I was reminded of Sam Raimi as I was watching this film, and kind of the grassroots of how his direction, him being a director in his career developed. He started out with those very low budget horror films, the gore films, the shock factor. And then he moved into, and then he gets the keys to Spider-Man and the comic book kingdom, and then he makes.
I was going to say, if there's a film that this is very similar to, it's the Evil Dead series, isn't it? Like
Evil
Army of
Dead 2,
Darkness and all those.
definitely, with the more tongue-in-cheek tone and the violence, absolutely. Some of like the very crazy close-up invasive camera angles and the same energy of it. This is obviously a lot gorier than Evil Dead 2, but the main character, we'll get into characters in just a second, because I just want to finish about like the countries that it's banned in, but the main character didn't quite have the charisma of Bruce Campbell in those Evil Dead films, but he very much had the same energy to me. But we'll get onto characters in just a second. So, of course, it gets an 18 rated certificate there. I think in America, it obviously was released in the cut version, I believe. Germany, it was released in the 94-minute cut, but then I think actually it was banned, if I remember rightly. It's also illegal to publicly exhibit the film in Germany. I believe that still stands. And the gory violence caused the film to be banned in South Korea, Singapore, and Finland. And it's still banned in South Korea and Singapore. Finland only lifted its ban in 2001. So as far as I know, I think it's still banned in Germany, South Korea, and Singapore. So if you hail from any of those places, you're kind of screwed. You've got to go illegally and watch it on your own back if you can. But mad that it had that kind of impact.
Yeah, very, very. Yeah, that's kind of odd. But I guess this film is incredibly gory and bloody and stuff like that. So certain countries have certain restrictions on film, and obviously this kind of ticked over the line. And I will feel like it was almost overkill. But that added to the charm of it.
Loved it. Yeah, that's what it needed to be.
But anyway, we should get into the characters now. So the main character is Lionel Cosgrove, played by Timothy Balm. I haven't actually seen him in anything else. You said you mentioned that you saw him in like a TV show, or recognized him, but he'd been in the TV show you'd seen.
Yeah, I don't remember him specifically, but Shortland Street was a New Zealand like primetime soap opera. It was set in a hospital, and my mum used to watch it, and growing up it was just on in the background. I remember vague bits, but I don't remember specifics. I certainly don't remember actors, but the way I equate it for anyone in the UK, a lot of British actors when they were starting out would always be in the bill, which is like a I guess it is kind of like a soap opera. It's not really a soap opera, is it? I don't know how you'd qualify it, but it's a long run-in British police TV series, essentially fictional police series. And a lot of actors started out in that then eventually made it big. Shortland Street is like the New Zealand equivalent. Australia would be Neighbours, for
Neighbours.
example. Yeah, every place seems to have one of those type of shows that a lot of people started from, and Shortland Street is that New Zealand equivalent.
Yeah. It's quite an interesting character to have as your main in a horror comedy because he's quite timid, not very sure of himself, and kind of very pressurized by his mum during the film. That becomes quite kind of key plot point, especially towards the end, of kind of trying to get out of his mum's shadow and stuff like that. But it's really interesting because normally you'd think of like, oh, kind of horror film, kind of leading characters, they end up being quite strong and stuff like that, whereas he's quite weak and just kind of somehow manages to survive the entire thing. It's kind of part of the charm that goes with his character, that he's just out there kind of looking for a bit of love and just trying to kind of get on with his life.
Yeah, and I think like the love story angle, it did remind me of Meet the Feebles, actually, how you've got all of this horrible, sadistic stuff happening around, but at the core of it, you've got this very nice, genuine, kind of naive, and you're rooting for the love story at the end of it. So, yeah, you've got Timothy Balm and Diana Peñalva, I think that's how you pronounce it, Spanish actress. Yeah, and I really liked their relationship, and you don't want to see him die, when he's in that situation at the end. And you probably know that he's going to make it out of it, which of course he does. But that seems to be kind of at the root a lot of Peter Jackson's films. As I mentioned, Meet the Feebles, this one. I mean, next week for Heavenly Creatures, there's a love story at it, but my God, that goes places. Especially, you're talking about themes of getting out of mother's shadows. When we get to Heavenly Creatures, Jesus Christ. And although I'm not a big fan of it, it did kind of remind me of King Kong. I know you've got Adrian Brody and Naomi Watts, isn't it? I was going to say Naomi Harris. That's a very different actress, Naomi Watts. And there's a love story angle there that feels kind of naive, but I'm not a big. We'll get to that when we get to King Kong. I'm not a fan of that love story in that film. But it does seem to be a recurring thing in Peter Jackson's films. But I really like those characters. It is kind of cliche, but I know that's the point. It's a film that knows exactly what it is. It's not trying to be grandiose or, something that it isn't. It is very tongue-in-cheek and stereotypical in many ways. You've kind of got the Hispanic character that's all about the occult and, tarot and bad voodoo, juju things that are going to happen and everything like that. And I don't know, it kind of added a layer to it. It was like a familiar kind of stereotypical layer to it, but it's a film that's all in good fun, and I kind of appreciated that angle, I guess, with it.
Yeah, it's it has some interesting kind of plot points in this film, which I mean, I'm not sure if I would have wanted them to go in that direction. I feel like it was a lot stronger if they went with kind of the mother kind of son dynamic and pushed that really, really hard in this film. I wasn't completely sold on the naive kind of love story with it.
Right.
But yeah. It kind of came through in the end, I guess. So, I mean, it was linked to the mother story, but I feel like that mother-son bond was a lot stronger to kind of play off. And I don't know if it was because he did a love story in his previous film that he wanted to kind of carry that over and stuff like that. And I mean, I guess it's become like a key part to almost all of his films that he puts out.
Yeah.
So
there's a bit of Norman Bates kind of going on there as well. Not to the same degree, but the overbearing mother and wanting to be free of her. Because ultimately, like, that is the theme of this story in many ways. It's this kind of shut-in mama's boy kind of lead character, this very overbearing, controlling mother, and it is a son's duty to take care and look after his mother, which you get in there, but also by the end of the film he's liberated and he's free from her tyranny and he can kind of forge his own path. So there is that kind of nice little thematic quality to it. I actually thought the mother was played very well as well by Elizabeth Moody.
She was, yeah,
English-born New Zealand character. Very grotesque character in some ways, which Peter Jackson seems to do so well. There's always kind of like a gross out character in some of his films, Lord of the Rings included. I mean, that eating scene with Denethor in Return of the King when he's snacking on the tomatoes, absolutely disgusting. You've got the Master of Lake Town, Stephen Fry's character, and Ryan Gage's character of Alfred in the Hobbit films. But I think probably the grisliest character in this film is Uncle Les, played by Ian
I
Watkin,
was going to mention
who
Uncle
was
Les.
so sleazy and despicable. But by the end of it, I kind of loved his character.
I
There's a running
legit
theme of him
okay.
getting
This
kicked in
this
the
is
balls as well,
a
which is
spoiler here, but I thought he was going to survive through all of the bullshit that he went through before actually dying.
yeah.
Like the fact that he had the baby in the blender ready to go, and then just kind of like he is a survivor. He managed to get through way more than he should have. Normally, that kind of character is the first one to die, but in the end, he dies to the hands of mother, shall we say?
Mhm.
Um,
There's
which
like
is
no redeeming qualities about this guy, is there? Which I kind of
zero.
appreciate.
In
It's
fact,
just
the only redeeming quality is he's good at killing zombies, and it was quite fun watching him surviving the zombie bit. I was like, oh my god, he's actually going to get through this, isn't he? And it was like, no, he's not surviving that at the end.
this is the scene where he's got like the twin meat cleavers and the footage
Yeah,
is sped up and he's like chopping through them really quick. And then it
yeah,
like cuts to the wide shot and there's just a mountain of limbs and severed
yeah.
heads that he's got piled up. Yeah, he was
Fantastic.
great. I loved his character. You know, he's wearing a toupee. Not against
Yeah,
anyone who wears a toupee. If you're watching this review and you wear a toupee, I'm not having a dig, but you know, he's being sleazy with women, he's making advances, he's gross, the extreme close-ups and everything.
he's trying to
He's
blackmail
He's
Lionel.
trying to get the inheritance. He's trying to get the house, and then there's the running theme of him repeatedly getting kicked in the balls, which is really
Mm,
stupid. But by the
yeah,
I think it's like 5 times it
it
happens in the
works
film.
every
It
single time. I
works.
laughed.
It's
Yeah,
funny. It got more and more funny as it went through.
but
Just
there are
wanted to
loads of.
mention. Oh, go
I
on.
was going to
Sorry.
say so many colorful characters in this film. But I know you said Uncle Les was one of your favorites. My favorite has to be the cameo of Father Magruder,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
who has not only the best line in the film, but possibly one of the best lines I've heard in any kind of B movie, in any horror, just any kind of movie,
Do you
really.
want to give the line, Tate? Do you want to do it?
I'll let you give the line because you were quoting it so heavily beforehand.
Like, I kick ass for the Lord. He's a kung fu priest. He's a kung fu pastor, which
It's a
is
kung fu priest.
I was like, who knows that Peter Jackson can also do kung fu martial art films as well? And he
Yeah,
shows up out of nowhere, like he's a regular priest. You know, he's
yeah.
a functional. He's a little bit kooky, but you know, name me a character that isn't kooky in this film. And then he just jumps down and starts kicking zombie ass.
He is
He
so
is
good at it.
throwing moves. He's throwing combos. He's like a character from Street Fighter or Tekken. He sweeps the leg, Johnny, of a zombie, which takes the lower limbs off. I think he like kick one's head off as well, and then he
Yeah,
dies straight away. And I was gutted,
I
but
was going to say, if
he
there's
left his
one
impact.
scene, if there's one, look, we've said, oh yeah, the scene so far, like you've got the lawnmower scene, you've got the custard scene as well. If there's one scene that you need to see from this film, even
Oh
if
yeah,
you don't watch the rest of the film, I would pick this scene because it's just so bonkers and it's so violent and it's so hilarious and it doesn't last too long. But it's so funny that he's able to basically take all of them down and still die anyway.
yeah.
It's like,
And dying style, like the dude gets
yeah,
impaled by a statue through the dick. I think, isn't
yeah,
it? Is it like an angel statue that's like raising its
yeah,
hand
yeah,
up to
yeah.
the Lord or something? Like, but he does come back. He comes back as a zombie, so it's not like he's out of the film. But
Mm.
what an
And
intro
then,
scene,
as
a
a
one and done
zombie,
scene.
when he comes back as a zombie, he's trying to get his nut on. It's like hilarious.
Yeah.
It's just,
And he does, and
yeah,
he
he
sires
does.
a child in record time. Probably like 5 minutes. There is a
And
child,
then
and
the baby zombie is born, which eventually ends up in the blender. I can't even remember how the baby zombie died. There was so many
the
different
baby
ways the
lived.
baby
No, it
zombie.
lived to the end, dude. It kind of sequel baits at the end. The
Oh,
baby's
of
in the
course it
burning
did.
building at the end, but the fire
I was going to
department are
say,
going in to rescue
it's
people,
like
so the baby
the amount of
survives.
times that the baby zombie almost died, like, and just didn't die. It was crazy.
Let's talk about the baby real quick. So this is
Yeah,
actually
sure.
kind of amazing to me. I'm going to find the direct thing here. So apparently the movie was finished under budget. I'm guessing the baby would have been in the film anyway. Of course it would. But the movie was finished under budget. And I think they had about 45,000 New Zealand dollars remaining. And
Yeah.
with that money, Peter Jackson spent 2 days shooting the scene in the park with the baby, where the main character kind of takes it out to
You can
like the
tell.
playground.
You can absolutely tell.
And it's just, and Peter Jackson went on record saying that it's his favorite scene in the film, and it's hilarious. Like he is like smacking this baby off like a swing
Yeah.
set. Like he is trying to track this baby down. Like bicycles are crashing into this child. Like you cannot kill this child. It's hilarious. He's like a bit of like a Chucky baby.
Yeah.
Like a terrible toddler. It's a hilarious scene. It's absolutely brilliant. And you've got like onlookers looking in horror, like, oh my god, this guy's beating up a child. And this is what I mean, like people saying that Peter Jackson has no taste. There is such a humor to his
It's
earlier
such a
films,
good
though.
humor.
And I do think, like, I love Meet the Feebles. I think for me, Meet the Feebles is a more consistent film beginning to end for me personally. This one, I enjoyed it, but it really came into its own for me in the final act. Like that whole
I mean,
ending onslaught of the zombies was where I was like, this film
the,
is genius.
the
But it
final
did
act, you've
take a
got
little
the
bit to get there for me.
you've got the onslaught, you've got the baby zombie, you've got the various different deaths for the various different characters, and then you end up with the tit monster that is Mother coming out of the grave. Just the most grotesque thing you've ever seen.
Yeah.
I was so confused. I was like, what is going on? It was just.
There is kind of like a birthing sort of mother aspect, isn't there? I was thinking, because
Yeah.
in a way, like it reminded me of Bad Taste, where at the end Peter Jackson goes through, the character of
Yeah.
Derek goes through with a chainsaw, comes out of like the ass essentially of the alien, and then he says like, I'm born again, and there's kind of like a birthing metaphor kind of thing towards the end. And there is with this one, but it's kind of like a reverse birth, like the belly opens up like a cavity trying to swallow the son back into the womb. It's bizarre. There's
I'm sure
huge,
if you want to get really deep and do a video essay on this, I'm sure there's so many different kind of things you can come up with, kind of theme wise and meanings and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
But honestly, for anyone who's ever played the game Binding of Isaac, this is as close as you'd get to a film version of that game. It is just grotesque and hilarious, and I really enjoyed it. Actually, I really enjoyed it.
We need to talk about the practical effects in this film, because
we do, and that's a good kind of jump off point, because I'm guessing at the end that was a giant puppet. That was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. I think the only ropey thing in the film, and it is kind of charming in a way, is the stop motion animation on the rat monkey in the zoo, certainly. And it's like doing like this crazy waving thing.
If genuinely, if there's one thing you would change about the entire film, it would be the rat monkey, how they would handle it. Yeah. Even if they got like one of the puppets from Meet the Feebles, like one of the really kind of grotesque ones, like the rat in Meet the Feebles or something like that, that would have worked better.
And there is a scene where it is a puppet, where Mother kind of crushes its head and its eyes are like popping out. Yeah. That reminded me of Meet the Feebles. That's a puppet, and that didn't look too bad. But it is the stop motion stuff. But Peter Jackson loved his stop motion stuff. You know, when he first started out as a filmmaker, he did a lot of models, and he was inspired by Ray Harryhausen. Obviously, he loved the original King Kong, which pioneered stop motion effects in films. Yeah. So he was very much at home with that. Now, the film special effects in this were made by Bob McCarran and Richard Taylor, who, of course, is longtime contributor to Weta Workshop. He's the head of Weta Workshop. He worked on all the Lord of the Rings films and The Hobbit. He's the founder and creative director of that prop department and making the creatures and the props and the models. Absolutely outstanding guy, true master of his craft. And I'm guessing this was the first film that he worked on with Peter Jackson. And I mean, it stands testament to his work. Honestly, this film is without a doubt some of the best practical effects I've ever seen. Now, some do look ropey. You know, there's some moments where you're like, that's clearly a puppet, that's clearly a dummy. But it's so creative. Like, I was watching this film, you know, I have this with Lord of the Rings for many different reasons, and I know there's like 9 hours plus of behind the scenes telling you exactly how they made that film. And even when I watch that behind the scenes, when I watch the final film, all of those films, I can't fathom how anyone could make that. It's like, I can't almost believe what I'm seeing. I don't know where you'd even start with something like that. It's incredible. And obviously this is way more of a low budget film compared to Lord of the Rings, but there's effects in this and just the logistics of it all, getting that all together for that final sequence. I don't know how anyone could have made that. You know, like, I've seen plenty of low budget films. Bad Taste, I can go like, yeah, I can see kind of how it was made. Some great practical effects in there, but the scale and how over the top and the scope of it, and just when you think you've seen all the creative kills the film has to offer, the very next kill is even more creative than the last. One of my favorite shots in this, and genuinely, it must be a jump cut, but I didn't really notice it. There's a guy that's being sort of like clawed at, and they it's an actor. It's not a mannequin face. It's like an actor's face. And then they grab his skin and like peel his skin off his face, leaving like a bloody kind of muscular skeletal face underneath it. no idea how they did that. It looks incredible.
I was going to say the first kill with the nurse, I got me the most. I was
Oh, is
like,
that when it's
oh,
punched through the mouth?
yeah, punch through the mouth.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Oh no, the nurse. You talking about the one earlier in the film?
The first,
Oh,
the
where
first
they
one
like
with the,
grab her face.
yeah,
That
grab
one.
her face and pull it back. Yeah,
That was great. I
grim.
mean, there's the
The
jack o'
one through the
lantern
mouth
one
as
as
well was
well.
fantastic. The one where like the poster, the baby kind of jumps out and stuff
Yeah.
like that. That was
There's
great.
there's so many. There's the guy that's kind of got all of his like the meat of his legs has been chewed off, and
Yeah,
he's kind of got skeletal legs.
and then you have
Um,
the weird anus monster that chases him for a bit with the intestines. And
yeah,
for
what
anyone
was?
who's watching this review, they're going, "What is this film?"
Yeah, it's there's so much that we aren't even mentioning in this film. Like so many of the creative kills. There are heads getting ripped off with spinal columns and swung
Yeah,
round. There's zombie babies in blenders. Oh, and actors as well. I wanted to mention them. There are
yeah,
probably other ones in Lord of the Rings, but the two that really stand out to me. His character of Roger, honestly can't place him off the top of my head. I've only watched this film once. He's played by Harry
yeah.
Sinclair, who would go on to play Isildur in the Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring. And the one that I did notice in the film, and again, long-time contributor of Peter Jackson, is Jed Brophy. He's appeared in loads of his films. He's in Heavenly Creatures. He plays a bunch of the orcs in the Lord of the Rings. I believe he played the one in I think he played two in Two Towers actually. I don't know how well you remember the Two Towers, but it's like, yeah, why can't we have some meat? What about them? They're fresh. It's in the looks like meat's back on the menu, boys scene.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
plays him. He plays the one that when Aragorn goes off the cliff. He plays a bunch of them, and of course he plays Nori, one of the 13 dwarves in the Hobbit films as well. I believe before they got Andy Serkis as well, he wore the motion capture suit as well. I think that might have been either for Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. I forget which one. He kind of just stood in just so they could kind of map out what they wanted to do and get their heads around it. And he's great. And he plays the one who gets pulled down the toilet and then
yeah.
launches himself onto the lawnmower. Yeah, there's just so much creative stuff in this as well. Do we need to talk about the music, or have you got any more things to say about the practical effects?
No, I mean, moving on to the music, it didn't grab me. I'll be honest. There wasn't
Yeah,
anything
yeah,
that
same.
it was quite kind of dull. The only scene where I really noticed it was the lawnmower scene because they really crank it up with that kind of carnival music, which I thought was a bit of
Yeah,
an odd choice for it. But I knew that going into the film that was the music in that scene, so it didn't catch me off guard. I can't really think of any other music in the other scenes. It was just kind of background, kind of almost that kind of that happy valley kind of like all is well soap opera kind of music in the background. And I think that may have been done intentionally just to kind of lull you into false sense of security, like, oh,
yeah,
it's not actually a soap opera, it is a horror comedy kind of film.
yeah. I think it's a lot of sort of like synth string kind of sounds,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
it adds to the feel of the film, that kind of B movie quality to it, as indeed it did with Meet the Feebles. Peter Descent, I think that's probably how you pronounce his name. They did Meet the Feebles, obviously the soundtrack to this film, and he also does Heavenly Creatures as well, which we'll be reviewing next week. I'm actually looking at the soundtrack for this film, and now I couldn't get my head around the fact that Sodomy from Meet the Feebles makes a return on the soundtrack. It is the final track on the album, and it's got Sodomy from Meet the Feebles. I don't know why it's on there. And then I found out that during the funeral scene in the film, apparently played on the church organ. I didn't clock this when I watched it. I'm going to have to watch the film again. Sodomy is played on the organ as like a sort of a reference to his previous film. So I'm going to have to watch that again. But honestly, I was blown away. The final part of this film is just absolutely tremendous. There is so much fun to be had with this film. The locations as well at the beginning for Skull Island, I wanted to mention that quickly. I am not going to pronounce this correctly, but Putangiria Pinnacles, I've pronounced that horribly, in New
Mm.
Zealand. I believe that's where they filmed the Paths of the Dead sequence from Return of the King. It's a very striking formation of rock and like sort of narrow corridors with gravel and sort of like slate throughout. I remember it so distinctly from Return of the King and watching it again. And I think they do mention in the behind the scenes that they went back to there where he shot Braindead. Now I've actually seen Braindead, I can
Yeah.
appreciate it a lot more.
Mm.
It's just Peter Jackson having so much fun, you know. The last thing that I did want to mention about this film, apparently there was a lawsuit surrounding the film based on it was the graveyard scene. apparently they shot a tombstone, like a family tombstone, and they sued the film because they didn't want the tombstone to be shown or something like that, their family tombstone. I've no idea, but there was a lawsuit around the film, and I think they worked it out. But I had so much fun with this film. This was on a level for me. I do prefer Evil Dead 2, I would say, but this is a different kind of energy for me. This is obviously a lot more extreme, a lot more gorier, but it was in the same ballpark. It had that same kind of energy to it. The main character, very similar style character to Ash, how he's sort of this naive hero who has to then go against all of these zombies and kind of becomes a hero by the end of it. It was in that same vein to me, but this might become like a Halloween tradition for me watching this film. I could absolutely see myself watching this around like the Halloween holiday season. It's just so much fun. I had a blast with it. Some of the most creative practical effects I've ever seen in a film. I think for me, still top of the list would probably be John Carpenter's The Thing, maybe. But
Yeah,
right at
I'd
number
agree with
2
that.
or pushing very, very close to it would probably be this film as well. There are certain effects in this film. I have no idea how they even managed to achieve them. And it's just great fun. If for nothing else, it's just a really, really fun zombie film. And for someone who's kind of burnt out on zombie films, I feel like I've seen everything there is to see. I feel like
This is something fresh.
the well has been well and truly mined in terms of zombie films. It's like, do you do fast ones? Do you do slow ones? Do you make a gory one? I've seen it. I've seen it done. I've seen zombie comedies before, Shaun of the Dead, just to name a few. There's Zombieland, of course. This one showed me something I hadn't seen before. This went to the extreme, and it delivered, and I just thought it was absolutely brilliant. So that's my glowing recommendation on Braindead.
Excellent. I'm also going to give it a glowing recommendation. Just another final bit of kind of trivia for it, but Simon Pegg said that it was one of his main influences for Shaun of the Dead, this film.
Oh,
He's
right.
obviously seen this film growing up and stuff like that, and it was that kind of that inspired him to make a zombie film of his own, which is absolutely fantastic that he was kind of able to do that. But this film was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. It's the first Peter Jackson film where it's actually properly kind of grabbed me and kind of I would watch again. With the other two, it's kind of like, oh, it's one of those, you've seen it and now maybe I won't go back to it, or maybe in a very, very, very kind of long period of time I'll go back to it. But with this one, it's like, wow, it was engaging, it was gory, it was funny, it had all the elements there. It's really, really fantastic. So I'm giving it a glowing review as well. It's the first Peter Jackson film that's properly kind of grabbed me. And I'm looking forward to seeing how his development goes further, because next film on the list is Heavenly Creatures, which is his first Oscar-nominated film, his first forte into drama and stuff like that. So it'd be very interesting to see how different that is from this film, whether there is any carryover at all. I highly doubt it. Maybe on shot choices or something like that, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the same cinematographer as Braindead. I have just noticed that. It's the same editor, so it does look like it has a lot of the same creative team behind it. But yep, so that'll be our review for next week. That's going to be Heavenly Creatures, 1994 film, and yeah, moving into a biographical psychological drama film. I have seen the ending to that film already, so I guess I have kind of spoilt myself with it a little bit. But that's going to be Thursday, the 18th of November, once again at 10 p.m. GMT. But this has been really fun talking about this one. I do want to mention, I've got to give him a shout out because he's one of our long-time viewers and always respect him for his comments. Carl has said, finally, I've just ordered my Cinema Savvy t-shirt and hoodie. We'll definitely wear them on my cinema visits. Thank you so much, man. We really do appreciate the support. So thank you for picking those up. We really do appreciate it. And yeah, start spreading the Cinema Savvy word, because we've got so much stuff coming out, guys. So much stuff. Not just Peter Jackson stuff. We have so much more. The rest of the remainder of November and especially December is going to be absolutely packed. I'm kind of scared myself personally, but we're going to go through some of the stuff we've got coming up in the immediate couple of weeks anyway. So obviously, as we mentioned, next Thursday, expect that. Next Tuesday, we've been going through the Austin Powers films. This is kind of like the tail end now of our James Bond retrospective. We've done all the James Bond related stuff now, and we wanted some fun. So we've gone to the Austin Powers film. So that's going to be the second one. That's going to be Tuesday, the 16th of November. That's going to be 8 p.m. GMT. Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, which is my personal favorite of the Austin Powers trilogy. Very much looking forward to talking about that one. And Wednesday of next week, there's a new Spider-Man film coming out in December, and we're going to take it upon ourselves to go back and review all of the live-action Spider-Man films. Probably not count. I think there was like a TV movie maybe that came out before this one, but the main ones, the ones that people talk about at least,
The Raimi
and that
films,
will
basically, to start
hopefully,
off with.
yeah, the ones that will hopefully tie into the new one in some way, shape, or form as well. So we're going to be talking about Sam Raimi's original Spider-Man 2002 film. That's going to be Wednesday, the 17th of November, once again, 8 p.m. GMT. And then we're going to be going through Spider-Man 2, 3, the Amazing Spider-Man films, and that's going to lead us into the new one, because we already have reviews on Spider-Man Homecoming and Far From Home. And also, Monday the 22nd, God, we've got so much stuff coming out, guys. Ghostbusters Afterlife review. That's going to be the new Ghostbusters film. Once again, we've been covering the Ghostbusters films before. We've done Ghostbusters 1 and 2, and we're going to be talking about that one. We've gave the 2016 one and wide berth, but we do have the 2016 review on the channel and various reaction videos as well for you to check out. Guys, we're almost to daily content. It's going to be absolutely mad. And of course, if you're enjoying the Peter Jackson stuff, we're going to be here carrying on with that as well. Heavenly Creatures next week, The Frighteners after that, and then pretty much the month of December is going to be all Lord of the Rings. So if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, hit subscribe. The socials
Chris,
are going to be going.
This is genuinely Christmas for an entire month for Chris.
I know, this is amazing. I'm actually going to like Christmas now. I have a reason to like Christmas, and it comes in the shape of Lord of the Rings. Who would have known? But our socials are going across the bottom of the screen right there. So we've got Twitter at cinema_savvy, Facebook.com and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy. And of course, there's a link to TeePublic in the description down below, where, like Carl, you can pick up a t-shirt or a hoodie or various other merch that we've got on there to support the channel. Guys, this has been Braindead, which we've absolutely loved. So we'll see you guys next week for the next Peter Jackson video, which is going to be Heavenly Creatures. Till then, take care, everyone.